We have to have the mindset that we all share this, right? We're all a part of this. We all share this media. We all share like our communities. We share the country. We have to understand that it's a we thing, not a me thing, but a we thing.
Welcome to Flip Your Script, the podcast about life's critical turning points and how people find the inspiration and motivation to move forward and rewrite their unique stories. Flip Your Script is produced by Media Minefield, a public relations firm passionate about the power of sharing stories. Specializing in earned and social media, Media Minefield helps clients take control of their unique story and message. The show is hosted by Kristi Piehl, founder and CEO of Media Minefield, who flipped her script from an Emmy-winning journalist to a successful entrepreneur and speaker.
In some cities, the name Henry Lake is synonymous with sports. He's covered sports teams in Kansas City and Minneapolis. His career is successful because he put in the hard work, built the right relationships, and honed his craft. His flip your script moment may be happening right now. Henry is no longer identified as simply a sports expert. Since George Floyd's murder, he's been interviewed by news anchors and reporters across the country to give insight into being a Black man in America. Henry, welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure to be on with you, Kristi. It is, we're living through some very, very interesting times, right?
Boy, you can't even open a history book and look back and say, well, here's what they did to get out of this. We're paving a trail here.
Yeah, isn't it crazy? Because you think back when we were kids, right? We're opening up the books and we're looking and we're like, man, what happened here in the 1950s and 60s and even before that? And just think, 40, 50, 100 years from now, kids will be doing the same thing looking at us.
Absolutely. And between what's happening with race in America, what's happening with what happened in the Capitol and the insurgency that's happening, we have a terrorism issue of people in America more than external other countries creating havoc and violence in America. This is a time where there's a lot going on. Oh yeah, and we have a pandemic.
Yeah, there's so much going on, and I think that one of the real conversations that we have to have is how are we going to connect and unite? And I know that a lot of people are just assuming that things are going to go smoothly with the transition with the presidency. I don't think it's just going to be that smooth. It's not that easy. It's not like you just turn on flip a switch, because people have to be ready to have genuine and honest and open conversations about how we're going to move forward.
And that's what you've been doing really since George Floyd, perhaps before, but not quite to the level of intensity and urgency that has happened since George Floyd. And I want to make sure I get it right, but there was a soundbite of you from your radio show that made some local headlines during the riots in Minneapolis. The headline read, Minnesota sports host Henry Lake gets emotional on air about George Floyd death. Is that an accurate headline? Did you like that headline?
Yeah. Because it was real. It was in the moment. And people, one thing that everybody knows about me, whether you like me, love me, hate me, whatever, disagree with my sentiments, my takes, is that I'm authentic, I'm genuine, and I care for people. And I care for our state, I care for our city, I care for our country. And in that particular moment, in the midst of everything that was going on with, people protesting, many of them or the majority of them peacefully, but then you had people that were, looting, rioting, burning things down. To see our city be in such disarray and to see people be heartbroken about that video of a man being basically lynched on the streets of Minneapolis, that was I cried about it. I had a moment on the air where it was like I showed how vulnerable I am, because as a Black man, to see that and to see the way that people were reacting, it'll make you emotional, and I wasn't the only one that had a moment. And I remember, I want to say it was about a week or so after everything, Kristi, where I did a special on a Saturday, because in that particular moment, right, everybody at our station was working 24/7. Well, on a Saturday, I had a special show where I had a lot of different people on the show talking about how are we going to move forward. I had activists on from around the country. I had people in media on, and one of my guests was Bakari Sellers from CNN. And Bakari, he's also a Morehouse College man like I am, right? And there's a lot of similarities in our background, but he is phenomenal. He does a phenomenal job on CNN. And I remember, I want to say after I had him on that special show, I want to say the week after that, he had a moment on CNN. So I guess what I'm saying is that I think that everybody, I won't say everybody, but a lot of people had moments. It's just about where were you when you had that moment? Were you in your living room? Were you in your bedroom? Mine just happened to be when I was on the air talking about how hurt I was.
I was watching this at home with my family, and my kids have never seen me drunk. They've also never seen me super upset. So when we were sitting there watching all of this, it's midnight and we're watching this, and I was so in a state. And my 13-year-old turned to me and he said, "Mom, are you drunk?" And I said, "No, honey, this is what an emotion that is heartbreak, that is horror, that is because on the one part there's this peaceful protest of people who have never been heard."
Mm-hmm.
And that was happening, and we're watching that. And then it went to violence and hate and burning buildings and who's actually doing this. And it was such a strange, there were just so many emotions. And then there's the video of George Floyd that won't leave it's in our heads, and it will stay in our heads forever. And it's important it does, I think. So it was such a strange time, and I'm grateful that I got to do that in my basement with my family. You people in the media, you did it publicly, and we saw, Don Lemon had a moment. Like, a lot of people had a moment. And the interesting thing, Henry, and you and I have talked about this before, there aren't that many Black voices in media. So when it comes to let's get some people to talk to about this, the pool is sort of small. So suddenly you found yourself speaking for a race, speaking for what's it like to be a man in Minneapolis and giving insight. And you're usually talking about sports. So what was that like for you to not only have your own emotions, but also then to be asked to speak on something so big?
Yeah, it's well, there's a couple things with regards to that. So I think that the people that know me and have known me from the community work that I've done, being a native and always being around and trying to help out different charities and organizations forever, right? And being a product of the Minneapolis public school system, and just people just knowing who I am, nobody's surprised by that. So this, in terms of utilizing my voice in this way, I've always been this way, right? I've always spoken out when I feel like things aren't right. It's just different in that the platform that I have at WCCO is so big, and the times that we live in right now everything's so hypersensitive, right? And so I think that that's the reason why this resonated so much with more people. I've been speaking out and talking about things for years. I mean, you go back to when I was in Kansas City, everything that was going on with the Colin Kaepernick thing and the national anthem and stuff like that. And so I'm going to always speak on what I believe is true, and also speak out about things that I just feel aren't right, things that I think need to be heard from people. But it's just one of those situations where in this particular moment, to see that video, it really, I mean, that's something that touched people forever. I think that that particular moment for our world, and specifically the United States of America, has touched people in the way that, and me and you weren't on planet Earth when this took place, but when Emmett Till was killed, and people still, I mean, I remember to this day still seeing those images. Like, they're still in my head of him in his casket and with his mother showcasing to the world what they did to her son. So if I can remember that as a Black man my entire life and seeing that as a younger kid, and it was like Jet or Ebony magazine, think about all the young people that saw the video of George Floyd be killed on 38th in Chicago. It's so unfortunate. And by the way, I think that you gave a great idea. So we're gonna have to make sure that I don't know if you just do it associated with the podcast, but like a T-shirt with your face on it, my face on it, and it says, um, "Are you drunk?" That'd be a great T-shirt.
It was this like, I've never seen you like this, and
Yeah,
it's like I've never seen this unfolding, and it's and this is probably a wrong thing to say maybe, but this stuff has been happening
yeah,
a lot, but it's different when it's in your own city.
yeah. And let me add on to something because there's a part of it that you asked me about that I didn't answer, and I want to just follow up. Is that this entire moment has been so stressful. And I say that because when you mention the fact, it is a fact that there's a lack of diversity in the media, and it's specifically in the state of Minnesota. I think a lot of people look at me and they say you're the only black male that has a full time radio gig that's talking about things that matter, right? And so there's a lot of me being under the microscope, a lot of pressure, and I don't think that a lot of people get that, right? Because when so many people are looking to me, I want to get it right. You know, I'm not just articulating thoughts for me, I'm also speaking for people that don't have a voice. And so I think the thing about it, Christy, is that, and I can't even put into words or tell you the numbers, but since this past spring, it has been off the charts the numbers of people that text me, that reach out to me and say, Henry, thank you for speaking out and for saying what you're saying. It's just, I can't even tell you what the numbers are. Like, I get them every day. I've been getting, literally this week, I've been getting text messages from executives at different companies that are reaching out to me and saying, we support you, we thank you. You're saying things that a lot of people are not brave enough to say right now. And it's not in me to just be quiet. I mean, I have a platform, I have an opportunity to better the world. And so I'm built different that way. I know that everybody shouldn't have to want to speak up, right? Like in a utopia, I'd love for everybody to say, hey, this ain't right. Let's work together. Let's do all. But not everybody is willing to try to lead. Everybody can't lead. Some people have to follow. And I'm not saying that I am the world's leader, but I have no problem with trying to pave the way for other people to find their voice.
And you have that platform and you have the following at such a time as this, right? And this is when the voices need to be heard. But I also think it's really unfair, and I'm interested in your perspective on this, for everyone to say, well, let's look to people who are of color to comment on this. Like, we are where we are because of everybody. And one of the things that I think has come out of George Floyd's murder is that people who are white and are black and of all different racial backgrounds, ethnic backgrounds, are having conversations in a more real way because it's appropriate somehow. And that is strange to me. It was Father's Day, which was right after, wasn't that far after this was happening. And I was buying something for my husband at a store, and the man waiting on me was a young black man. And he asked me something and I asked him a question. We started talking about race. Like, very honestly about race. Dude's a stranger. And I'm, in his mind, probably an old white lady. And we had this conversation. It was really good. And I think we both probably went home and said, I had this really interesting conversation. But the world gets better when we start having real conversations. And I don't know, do you think that those kinds of conversations will keep happening? Or do you think we're going to get to a point where we're like, yeah, well, that was history. We're better now?
That's a good question. Should we continue to have these conversations? Yes. Do we always continue the momentum to carry it out, to have these conversations? No, because typically what happens is when we're in the moment, we have those honest, genuine conversations. But then when, things kind of die down a little bit, we get complacent, we get comfortable, and we just forget about it, which we can't do. That's just not acceptable for anybody. And I think that the thing about everything that's going on right now is that we talk about race, right? And race is a big part of it, but we also have to go a little bit deeper and talk about the other aspects of it, because when we talk about looking at certain situations and society, it's not just based on race, right? You got to think about people from different economic backgrounds, right? And so, like, I give you a perfect example. When some of this was when all this stuff was kind of going on, I remember this summer there was an interview that was done with it was some other people from the police union or federation, whatever, and they did an interview with WCCO television, and I disagreed with a bunch of different things that were said, right? And I was vocal about it. I said some things on social media, and there was a woman that went to high school with me, a Black woman, that she weighed in, she gave her perspective. She disagreed with me, right? And she's a Black woman, right? But if you dig deeper into her background and stuff, I mean, she's a former police officer. And so like it's not just race, it's also about what a person's occupation is, where they live in the state, economic background. So there's a lot of things that we have to sift through to get to that common ground. And I had known her like since we were kids, and her mother was an educator and all that other stuff, whatever. But because of her background in law enforcement, she saw things through a different lens than mine, than I did.
You bring up a really important point about diversity isn't just race. Just like before gay marriage was legal, people weren't, go back 30, 40 years, people who were gay weren't talking about it. And so then when everyone was talking about gay marriage, I felt I heard a lot of people say things like, well, I have a gay fill in the blank. It's like, hey, adding a gay person to your tribe doesn't make you suddenly really aware of the issues happening in the world. And we can't do the same thing now, I don't think, with people of color and say, well, I'm going to hire a couple and call it good. Like
I'm the Black friend.
Yeah, like nobody wants to be the Black friend, and nobody wants nobody wants to be the white friend or that's not the solution. So when we think about how conversations can move the needle, especially there are people who live in, we're talking in Minnesota, but other states where there isn't diversity of thought, of race, of all sorts of different things. How do we go forward, and what can we all do together? Because we can talk about it, but what are some solutions? That's the tricky part.
We have to have the mindset that we all share this. Right? We're all a part of this. We all share this media. We all share like our communities. We share the country. We have to understand that it's a we thing, not a me thing, but a we thing. And to me, that's so problematic. So one of the thoughts that's going on in the country right now that's so enraging to me, and we've seen it with the storming of the Capitol and stuff, and it's frustrating me. And the face of it has been, unfortunately, white men. But this whole, I want my country back. We have to get away from that, because that's dangerous. That I want to have my country back. I want it the way it was. What does that even mean? What are you even talking about? Like, we all share the planet. We all share this country. We've all invested in the country in various different ways. So when we get away from those type of selfish ideology, then we'll all be better. But there's no way in the world that I could look at any type of United States of America and say, well, I want it to be just about my own selfish ideas about what the country, I believe the country is. If the country is supposed to be about equality and justice for all, then that's what we need it to be. It can't be about equality and justice and economic advancement just for white men, or white people, or Black people, or Hispanic people, or whatever, right? You think about Minnesota. One of the things I've always loved about this state, and I would tell people about this when I was in Kansas City for 5.5 years, is that aside from, Minneapolis, Minnesota being home, the thing that I love about the Twin Cities specifically, and even other areas throughout the state, is that it's so diverse. Now, not necessarily from the numbers perspective, right? Because our numbers are still low. But if you are a person that's in the cities, you're going to come across white, Black, Hispanic, Somali community, the Hmong community. I remember when I was working in schools, like, I think that one of the coolest things was that I was able to connect and work with different kids from different backgrounds, you know? And, it wasn't always the most pleasant in terms of those conversations with some of those parents, right? About what their kids were doing and not doing. But just being able to sit down and talk to somebody that had a different perspective on American life, you know, sitting down with a kid who's born in the US, but whose parents came over from Laos, like that's different. That's impactful. And I just, that's what we have to have our mindsets at in terms of the United States of America. It's about we, it's not about me.
And the we is the problem and the we is the solution.
Yeah, the me is the problem. The me is the
Yes.
problem and the we is the solution. Yeah.
Yes. Because we all got here and we all have to, I think, also look back and say, what part of this do I own? What part of my own heart, soul do I need to re-examine? And I think everyone can do that. Whatever race you are, look at this and say, okay, what part of this, when I see someone, what is my stereotype? What is my bias? What is my whatever? And then, okay, how can I change that a little bit and a little bit more? And how can I make sure that the kids, the younger generation, their mindset isn't where mine was when I was 10 or 12 or whatever, because the first black man I saw was Gordon on Sesame Street. For real. I mean, I grew up in a small town in Minnesota. First black man I saw, I remember it. It was just like, wow, I haven't seen that before. And media reflects back to what people have to see and experience, even in these areas. Like, I grew up in a small town where it isn't there. So it is so strange in Minnesota, and you brought it up earlier, and a lot of states are this way. The urban community is one thing. You get an hour, 2, 3 hours away, it's a very different perspective. And you see it in the voting. I mean, even the voting, it's like, it's so, even as the, counties are coming in, it's like, it's just a totally potentially different worldview. And it didn't used to be this way. So how do we work together, all of us, to become more united and not the divided states of America?
I don't have the answer to that. If I did, me and you would be pretty rich.
I'll invest for sure.
We become pretty wealthy. I don't know what the answer to that is. I do think that it does start with having the genuine conversations. I mean, you got to speak from the heart, and you have to be willing to listen and open yourself up to being vulnerable. When I think about our state, one of the things that's really scary, but there are so many people of color that are like, man, do I ever really want to go to different outstate cities anymore to go visit and hang out, because the world is so different right now, which is that's the type of place that we don't want to be in, right? You don't want to be in a situation where places that, you have resorts here and you have all of these different places out of the Twin Cities, and people are kind of like, well, I'm not really sure if I want to go there, because am I welcome? And that's scary to think about, because that tells you how much of a dangerous place we are. And you start thinking about the cities that I've been to that I love going to and visiting, a Duluth, or going to a Brainerd, to go hang out at some of the golf resorts. Like, in 2021, I ever be apprehensive about going to different places in the state of Minnesota? It should never be a thought that passes my mind. That's really frustrating to hear people say that.
It's really interesting, because my husband and I have had so many of these conversations where it's similar how I think about hiring. Like, if I could get resumes and interview people and not know their race, would we all, and not me, but would corporations be structured the way they are if that's how we all worked? I get that that's like some Pollyanna, that's not going to work. Similar with politics. If someone were to write out all the things that a certain person said or did, and you didn't put at the top a label, Republican, Democrat, Independent, South, North, woman, man, black, white, and you just looked at it, and people made decisions based on right and wrong, based on just what they read, would some of this be different? Because people on both sides of the aisles are saying things and doing things, and I'm like, wait a minute, if it was switched, you wouldn't be doing or saying that. It's because of where your heart lies, and where the relationships you have formed are. But shouldn't we be thinking about right and wrong for the country? And again, That's Pollyanna. I get that isn't realistic. I get the people who know politics are like, yeah, that. But wouldn't that be great?
Yeah, all of it be different. And I've been saying that for a long time. It's all about right and wrong. And I think that's what's very problematic in this country. I got into a very spirited conversation with a friend, white male, and I told him, because he had posted some things that I disagreed with, and we, had a nice 45-minute conversation, and I said, look, you're looking at it through this lens, I'm looking at it through this lens, and my lens is it's right or wrong. We have a problem in this country where people are holding on to things that are near and dear to them, and it's labels. And labels are what's getting everybody in trouble. And what I mean by labels is I have to identify with being a Democrat. I have to identify with being a Republican. I have to identify with being a conservative. I have to identify with being a liberal. You got to get away from that. Because if you're stuck on that, you're never going to evolve. You're not going to be able to connect truly with people. You can't be stuck on a label. Now, of course, you're going to lean one way or the other, right? Or identify with certain things. But to label yourself that way, it's ridiculous to me. When I'm dead and gone, on my headstone, it's not going to say Henry Lake, Democrat or Republican or conservative. Like, what does it really mean?
It isn't going to say Henry Lake black man either.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah. It's not going to say any of that. So like, if people, and see, that's the thing with all of this that's so frustrating. And I'm not trying to call out just one side, but I'm just using this as an example. But like, people are saying, well, Donald Trump, he doesn't represent the Republican Party. Well, he does, because he hasn't been repudiated by the Republican Party. They've accepted him. So if you're going to say that he doesn't, then show me how you're saying that he doesn't, because right now he does. So you see what I'm saying? So that's an example of the label thing, is that for better or worse, he is attached to their brand. And when somebody is attached to your brand, if they're not representative of who you are and your ideology, then you have to say no. And I don't think that we say that enough. And this is for all groups, not just Republicans, but for all groups. There's not a person in politics, there's not a person in the world, anything that you do with your occupation where you're flawless. Everybody makes mistakes, everybody has issues. There comes a point where you have to own who you are, what you're about, and what you do, and move forward.
It's also so important to have diversity in thought around you. So I'm a better person because I have friends who are Democrats and who are Republicans, who are black and who are white, who are all these different things, because then I can think about my own thoughts and my own right and wrong. And also, one of the problems that I see is people are, whether it's social media or news or newspaper, they can focus in and find things that they agree with and never have to analyze, why do I believe this? Or what do other people think? Because even with the election, there are people out there right now who believe it was stolen. And and they can point to sources, because I go on a couple of Twitter accounts and look at what they're reading. And there are sources out there that look very legitimate that say, here's why it was stolen. And how could this be, take up arms kind of stuff. And then on the other side, people are saying, well, here's the other facts. So somehow in America, we have to get to a point where there's a truth that people can buy into, or I don't see a path to being united or having peace.
I think that the fact checking part has to be really continuously updated and fleshed out in our country, because the whole, like, the stop the steal is so weird to me, in that anybody that uses logic would say, if there was votes being stolen, specifically in a state like Georgia, of which I attended college in Georgia, right? The leadership in Georgia is Republican Party, right? It's notoriously always been that as a state. Why, if there was anything about stealing an election, why would not the leadership in that state come out and say, nah, why would they come out and say it didn't happen? It didn't happen. We got to a point where the leadership in that state taped the president, taped him, and he's saying, I just need you to find me 11,000 votes. Like, so I guess I'm so glad you brought that up, Kristi, because it's like, I think that we can look at this, cite this source, look at this outlet versus this outlet, whatever. But at the end of the day, there's something that we always have to lean on: common sense. Common sense will tell you some things just don't add up. If the election is being stolen and ballots are being, being pushed through 2 and 3 times and all these different allegations, why in the world would lawsuit after lawsuit get thrown out of court? Why would, the people in leadership in Republican states say, no, this is not true? At some point, you have to say, you know what? I got to really figure this thing out on my own, and I have to utilize common sense. And that's, I think that a lot of us are not utilizing common sense at the end of the day. And how do you move forward? How do you get better as individually as a person if you don't use common sense?
This is all such a good conversation in the realm that in the last, very recently, my son, who's 18-year-old, he's a straight Christian white man. He did a speech to his senior class at a private school that's not that diverse, an 8-minute speech about, to all of the students, we need to go to college and find diversity of thought, of all the things. And so because of that, he had to go find research. And I, didn't see what he was working on until the very end. And there's tons of research, like science-based research, that being around people and of diversity and thought, of gender, all the different things when I say diversity, and how that makes you better, but also makes your organization better. There's this one study where it was a school in Japan, and they put a mandate that they had to bring in half of the students from outside of the country, which automatically brought in diversity. And their results doubled within like 5 years. Now, I might be getting some of the specifics wrong. I'm happy to publish. I'll put the paper on not my son's paper, but this research on the Flip Your Script podcast website so people can read it. But there's a lot of science out there that this stuff makes us better. It isn't just right. It also makes us all collectively better, individually better. So this is where it's fascinating to me. There's tons of proof out there that people who feel like they are part of a tribe that challenges them, they produce more, they produce better things. So this concept of, you talked about it earlier, and really we're talking about segregation. I only want to stay with my people and people who think like me. That's what we're talking about. That was done in this country, and all sorts of horrible things happen. And we're kind of going back there, and it's really scary to me.
Yeah. And, I think about just in the realm of radio. I mean, I've hosted a show in Kansas City with someone that voted for Donald Trump, is a Trump supporter. I've hosted a radio show even before that with my co-host being atheist. So it's like, so it goes into the, it goes into the various different backgrounds and stuff like that. If you just isolate yourself just to people that look like you, think like you, whatever, and you don't value diversity, what are you going to be? I'm not the biggest viewer of Fox News, but I watch Fox News from time to time. I need to see what the the ideas and the different things that are being talked about on that channel. The same way that I'm going to watch CNN, or the same way that I'm going to watch MSNBC. So you have to do that. It just makes sense. It makes you better. It makes you more well-rounded. And I also, one thing in 2020, I said, man, I got to read some more books. A lot of people don't want to crack open a book. And I've always been somebody that likes to read, but I said, I got to read more. And that's a product of the quarantine, right? Gym's not open. I'm holed up. I'm reading some books.
Okay, so now I know this about you, and I have, we've done some late night texting. I'm sending you some book recommendations because I am like a crazy, weird book addict, and I hoard books. And I've been doing a lot of reading specifically about some of the things we've talked about, but I have so many good books. So watch yourself. You open yourself up for it, Henry.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I'm good with that. I'm good with that. It's funny because between that and then the Timberwolves stuff,
oh, the Timberwolves.
I won't even get you started.
I know. One thing I wanted to ask you is where does your career go from here? How do you keep building on this?
Who knows? I can't predict the future. I feel like I am going places, but I mean, you just never know because tomorrow's not guaranteed to any one of us. I mean, we know that as God-fearing people. I'm working hard. I don't know. There's a lot of people that like what I'm saying, what I'm doing, where I'm going, where I'm taking this. So I just that's such a hard one to answer. I just love the fact that I feel appreciated. You reached out to me. I'm on the podcast right now. Although I'm going to take a little bit of credit, though. When we were part of the panel on WCCO, I said to you, I said, hey, we need to catch up. So I'll take a little bit of credit for that.
You
But
should
no,
take
seriously.
credit.
But seriously, I don't know. I feel good that I feel appreciated right now. I had a couple days ago, my jaw was on the floor when it was 12:30 at night. I'm in a commercial break for my show, and I got a DM from a rising star at ESPN, and they said, "Dude, your show is blanking awesome." And I was like, and I'm a fan of theirs, and so then we exchanged information on or exchanged we had a quick conversation on via DM, and they're like, "I'm a fan of yours," and I'm like, "Whoa, what?" I'm like, "What?" "I'm a fan of yours, whatever." And he says, "Hey, I didn't really know you prior to everything the last until this past summer, whatever, but keep doing what you're doing." So those are the type of things that motivate me to continue to evolve and get better, because we can all do that, right? We can all continue to evolve and get better. And I've said this years ago when I was working with kids in the school before the radio thing blew up for me, is that we can learn from anyone. Like, there's so many times I learned from kids, like you would learn literally from little kids that will say something and you'd be like, okay, that's powerful. They may only be 10, but that moved me in a certain way. So what is my future? I'm not really sure.
So maybe this is a better question then, and you don't have to answer it, but I hope you will. Do you think that your future involves continuing this conversation, or do you think your future is back more primarily to sports?
No, it'll always be both. It's
Okay.
always been both.
I hope so.
Yeah, it's always been both. It's just because of where we're at in the country right now, I'm under the microscope more. That's the only difference. It's these type of issues I talked about when I was at KFan years ago. It's just that because of the things that we are tasked with talking about right now, because that's why, like, years ago, let's go back a decade, right? You weren't hearing people talk about stick to sports, right? Because there were some of us that were talking about issues and mixing it in, but this is pre-Kaepernick. This is pre-George Floyd. There were things that were happening. Hell, I remember being in college and protesting about Rodney King getting, beaten half to death. So it will always be a part of me. That was one of the reasons why I wanted to be a Morehouse man. It's the reason why I talk the way that I talk. I'm unapologetic for using my voice. I'll continue to always be who I am.
And it isn't the same, and I don't mean to say that it's the same, but I can only imagine the kind of things that people say to you or DM you or say to you. As a woman, when I was on TV, I got all sorts of crazy emails, inappropriate things said to me. As a woman in business, I get weird things said to me that people would never say to a man. I only say that because it's the only lens through which I can even sort of imagine some of the things that you've had to deal with in your career. So I hope that whatever you do going forward, as your voice maybe gets a bigger presence, that you continue to go through the filter of right and wrong, and that the haters don't get to you, because we need voices like yours.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I know I'm not for everybody, and I know that there are people out there that support me, 100%. I know that there will always be people out there, because we know how the world is. There will be people out there that will hate you, that will want to text line the station or say this and get that guy off the air and all that other stuff, whatever. But I don't concern myself with that, because the people in this market, the people in the country from coast to coast that have reached out to me, that have listened to me, with our platform and our brand, because WCCO is a station that so many people all over know about. They know where my heart is, and they know I'm consistent, and I'm not a hypocrite when we talk about these issues. When we talk about these issues, I'm more than willing to call out Democrats as much as Republicans, independents, whatever. I've had stances that even some of my friends disagree with me on, about defund the police. When we talk about certain things that go on in the community, with crime and stuff like that. I've been very outspoken about that. So I'm pretty consistent with my views and my opinions. And the thing that I'm going to always try to do is speak what I believe is the truth. And if there are things that eventually I say or do and I feel like I need to be corrected on it, or I get more information, I'm like, I was in the wrong, or I wasn't right in terms of my thinking. I'm gonna say that. I'm more than willing to call myself out when I make a mistake. Anybody should view themselves that way. Nobody should view their ideas or their opinions on the world as flawless.
100%. And that's half of the problem right now, is that people believe that they are right. And then they shut the door to other kinds of thinking and other kinds of opinions. It doesn't mean you need to change someone's mind, but boy, it's important to hear where they came from, because oftentimes perspective is based on things that you can't see on the outside.
Yeah, you just touched on it. Don't be closed-minded.
Last question. I know I could talk to you for a long time, Henry, and I know that our conversations about how I can help you be part of change are going to continue, and I want your help as well. Is there a quote or a song that has motivated you to flip your script?
Oof.
There's something you turn to.
I thought about that leading up to this. There's not one particular song that has necessarily motivated me, but one that always makes me feel good, though, is Fight the Power by Public Enemy. And I know that people will, for the most part, view Fight the Power as like some revolutionary anti-government type of, but it's not about that. You got to dig deeper into it. And you also have to attach it to the movie that I will forever love, is Do the Right Thing by Spike Lee. And I'm a big Spike Lee fan. He's one of the reasons why I went to Morehouse too. He's a Morehouse grad. Him, Samuel Jackson, and many more. So Martin Luther King Jr., he wasn't the only one that kind of led me down the Morehouse path. But when I think about Fight the Power, and I think about us all fighting for what's right and trying to do the best that we can, and then thinking about the slogan itself for that movie, Do the Right Thing, just do the right thing. Right. Those are the type of things that motivate me, because if we all do the right thing, okay, then we'll all be better. That's just the bottom line. And it goes back to what we were saying earlier, right versus wrong. Not about, what your political leanings are, not about, well, I got to do this based on, my social status, or I got to do this based on money. I would be more than willing to give a few dollars that I earn for a better way of life for all of us. It goes back to the conversation that we had a little bit earlier about thinking of the world as we, as opposed to me, and being selfish. We all share, the planet.
Thanks, Henry. Can't wait to see where your career goes. Some of the things that I took away from listening to Henry was there's a difference between right or wrong. And before you can identify right, you got to think about what's wrong and where your line in the sand is. Diversity of thought. I love that Henry's using his platform. He's at a certain place. He isn't letting the other voices get to him. He knows what he believes, and whether you agree with him or not, he'll probably change, at least make you think about something. Won't change your mind particularly, but might make you think differently. Take ownership of the things you've done right, the things you've done wrong, and how you want to get better. And at the end of the day, should we make a t-shirt? Are you drunk? I don't know. Perhaps we should. My hope is that Henry's story empowers you to believe you're capable of more than you think, to discover motivation, to uncover inspiration, and to find the strength to turn the page.
Thank you for listening to Flip Your Script, hosted by Kristi Piehl and produced by Media Minefield. If you like our message, please be sure to give us a 5-star rating, subscribe to the show, and share our episodes with your family and friends. Do you or someone you know have a story about flipping your script? We'd love to share it. Contact us on our website, flipyourscriptpodcast.com. To stay up to date on all things Flip Your Script, make sure to follow host Kristi Piehl on social media. You can also check out the website for pictures, resources mentioned in the show, and other great episodes.